Retirement in the U.S. Coast Guard. Okay, this is an important topic, and I think it's equally important whether you're planning to go into active duty or reserves, or if you're thinking about getting out of active duty and going to the reserves. I've had this conversation with many active duty people before, and I never tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do with their lives and their career. It's obviously, you know your situation better than anybody else, but I always like to encourage people to at least consider the reserves when it comes to getting out early. So let's say you did 8 years as active duty, you're kind of at that fork in the road. I don't really feel like I want to do 12 more years of this, but you don't necessarily want to give up that equity that you've built up. Switching over to the reserves is a really awesome potential thing to do. And the reason why is because you can calculate your reserve retirement by taking the active duty retirement as a base. So a standard active duty retirement at 20 years is going to get you 50% of your top 3 years average salary. So whatever your highest rank was, the highest 3 years in your career, your average monthly salary, you're going to get half of that for the rest of your life as soon as you retire. Every additional year you serve after 20 years, you get 2.5% more. That adds up. If you do the max at 30 years, 10 more years, 25%, you get 75% of that salary, which is going to be exponentially larger because not only is it 75% instead of 50, you've put in 10 more years, you've advanced, you're going to be making a lot more money at 30 years than you were at 20 years. So you're going to be getting a much healthier retirement. Now on the reserve side, it's calculated the same way with a couple of minor adjustments. Your retirement on the reserve side is based on points primarily. How a point works, on active duty, you receive 1 point for every day that you're on active duty. Doesn't matter if it's the weekend, whatever, holiday, every day that you're enlisted, that you have orders. So for a standard year, 365 points. 365 times 20 is 7,300. So after 20 years, you should have 7,300 points. That equates to 50% retirement. Okay, remember that number. It's important. So for the reserve side, we get points for doing active duty, just like active duty does. So if you do a period of Title 10 orders, ADOS orders, Title 14, whatever, you get a point for every day, just like you always do. You also get a point for every 4-hour drill period. So standard is we get 4 points for a typical weekend. And then there's other ways you can get points too. You can get points by doing correspondence courses, things like that, like online training. You can get like points only, like you don't get paid, but you can still get points. And then you can also get points for handling reserve readiness requirements, like going to get your flu shot, going to get your medical evaluation, dental, things like that. These all add up to a total, right? So now to go through a 20-year career in the reserves, if you do a standard year, you should get 75 points. So that's you get the 48 points for your 24 drill days, 12 months a year, 2 days each month. You get 12 points for your active duty because it's 2 5-day weeks in a row with the weekend in the middle. And then you get 15 points just for being a reservist and not doing anything evil, basically. So that's 75. So if you do that, 75 times 10 is 750, times 10, another 10 of that is 750, so 1,500 points. So you would take 1,500 and divide that by 7,300, and that percentage there gives you your percentage of an active duty's 20-year career. Then you take that number, that percentage that you just got, you split it in two, so you cut it in half because that's what you would do at 20 years. And then whatever that number is, you multiply it by your top 3 years, just like you would on active duty. And then that number is going to be what you start collecting, not on retirement, at 60. That's a standard, right? So if you didn't do anything extra, now if you do deployments, that adds up to points. If you do, periods of ADOS or parental leave, like you step in for somebody on active duty who's having a baby, that's more points. And then if you go 30 years in the reserves, obviously that's going to be even more points. So you would just do the same exact formula, and then you would be getting a higher number. Now, a couple things to keep in mind: that percentage, that the 3 highest years, is based off of active duty pay, not reserve pay. That's why I said it's the same thing. It's just calculated a little bit differently. So depending on how far you go in your reserve career, depending on how high you rank up, depending on how many deployments you do, you can still get a pretty healthy retirement. The other part of it that's a little different is you don't collect upon retirement, you collect when you hit 60. However, you can deduct time off of that 60 by doing periods of active duty. So again, lots of deployments helps with that, but also if you've done 8 years of active duty, remember that math we talked about earlier, that's 365 days of points per year versus 75 points you're getting per year on a standard reserve enlistment. So that's a whole hell of a lot more points. So you do 8 years of active duty, now you've got 365 times 8, which is already well above what you would have had for 20 years as solely a reservist. Now you put in 12 to 22 more years, you're going to have a much higher retirement. You didn't give up your equity by going active and then just getting out. You still kept that equity that you built up. And you deduct those 8 years. So you don't start collecting at 60, you start collecting at 52. So these are all things to consider. And I think that nobody's going to be able to tell anybody else what they should do with their life, obviously. But I just think it's definitely worth thinking about. If you are getting out of active duty, consider going reserve. You can even do 2 years, and if you don't like it, if for whatever reason it's not working out, you can get out. It's not a huge deal. And anyway, I know there's a lot of information, but I hope that that's helpful. Reserve retirement is not something that I think recruiters talk about enough, at least in terms of getting into the math of it. And so I just hope that that's helpful information. And if anybody has any specific questions on that or anything else related to retirement or otherwise, let me know down in the comments, and I will try to answer to the best of my abilities. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.